Thank you so much for coming out today. My name is Christy Thompson, and I'm with BIS, and we are going to be talking about how to proactively stop hackers and avoid a data breach. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. First off, if you have any questions, please pop them into the chat. Philip will try his best to take them throughout the presentation. If he can't, we'll hold them to the end, but they'll definitely get answered. And it is being recorded, so we will send out a recording after this webinar. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our host, Phillip Long. He is a technologist and entrepreneur, and he specializes in providing technology solutions and security consulting to businesses along the Gulf Coast. He's worked in the IT industry for over 20 years. He has 600 plus clients from Gulfport to Dothan, all the way up to Montgomery now. He is the current owner of 5 businesses, and he holds a certified information system security professional, also known as a CISSP, as well as a CMMC designation. So I'm going to pass it over to our host, Phillip Long.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. And I have a special guest with me today. And, I want to make this extremely interactive. So I'm going to try to keep my eye on the chat. Really, I want to answer some, really basic questions about cybersecurity, and then some very, basic solutions. And this is one of them. This is a particular product. You notice a lot of times I don't do that because we're doing more of a general kind of here's the things we need to put in place. But today, I think this product is really so revolutionary that it's something that is, this proactive threat hunting is something that is, it's not super new, but these guys have been at it a while, and we're going to, so I'll just go ahead and cut to the chase here, and I will go ahead and introduce Jeff Arbach. He's with Huntress. He's a senior channel account manager. He brings over 12 years experience working directly with guys like me, MSPs and SMBs, small to mid-sized companies, and located in North Carolina. He was complaining how it was cold, and been a part of Huntress for over 2 years. And so welcome, Jeff. Appreciate you taking the time with us.
Thanks for having me, Phillip. Excited to be a part of this and have some time with you and your group.
Yeah, for sure. So, and also you have an attendee that works with you as well, Ethan
Tancredi. So Ethan Tancredi and I spend a lot of time together. We virtually fly together and live together a lot. Ethan's on the call. Ethan is like myself, brings longer, maybe 15 plus years experience managing accounts and running MSPs in different parts of the country.
Yeah, Phil, in your bio, and you said you've been there 20 years, I was like, oh, I feel you, man. I feel let's just say, I was like, oh, yes, we have similar scars. But I will say that I am where it's actually cold outside of Syracuse, New York, versus where you all are. I'm sorry, Jeff. I probably could be walking around in shorts and a T-shirt, just saying.
Got it. So, well, good. Well, I'm glad to have you guys. I think we're going to have a really, something very effective that we're going to talk about. And so let's go ahead and jump in. I like to start kind of just get people thinking. I want to get some engagement here. And I've got this poll question that I would like to see about, getting answered. Let's see, you go to polls. All right. And the poll question is simply, are you truly prepared to face clients' cyber threats? I always like to get people's feel, and the answers are, there's 3 possible answers in this poll. Yes, I feel prepared. No, I don't. Or, hey, I'm not sure. And I'm always curious to kind of get understand where people are, and kind of seeing some things here. I'll hold it open just a couple more seconds here to keep us moving. And so I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the results. So what I would suspect, and which tells me something about the market, I'll let you guys weigh in too. 14% of people say no, they're not prepared. They fully recognize it. 86% say they're not sure. So one of you guys weigh in on that. What does that say? What's that say to us? I always try to, how do you interpret that?
When I see that, what comes to mind and what comes to front of mind is that there's just a lot of uncertainties, right? There's a lot of uncertainties. It's really hard to determine what today's threats are, where you're exposed. And that's the nice thing about having a partner like yourself, Philip, is that you can kind of bring clarity to that. So there's a group that says, no, I 100% understand that I'm not ready, and then the majority of folks around, I would say around the country, are just not 100% sure.
Yeah, it's hard, right, to stay on top of the latest threats, what's changing in this environment. I mean, you look at just the connectivity we have today versus, a few years ago versus, go all the way back to when all of us started our professions, right? All of those things, it changes so quick that I think that I'm not sure is it valid, because you're like, all right, I think I'm doing the right things, but is it enough? Right. I think that's the question I always had from my partners when I was on that service provider side was, and I hear this constantly from people when I go out to events is, am I doing enough things to protect me?
That's right. Yeah. Good stuff. And I would agree, wholeheartedly. And, for us, one of the things that I have been so focused on as a business owner is, for myself, reduction of risk, and for my clients, of course, reduction of risk. And, what I am so struggling to get this message out clearly, so I'll take a whack at it here on this call, that I think every business owner needs to hear. First off, of course, is that cyber attacks are really the greatest threats that's facing us. They could take us out of the game, and that's concerning. And I'm not trying to use scare tactics. I really believe that's true. But secondly, what I see, because I do a ton of network evaluations and I do a ton of technical business reviews with my clients, and I am so much trying to provide a solution that is, we'll call it, brings the most bang for the buck. And what I notice in networks is that people have varying solutions to stop threats. We call them, countermeasures or controls. Is a lot of compliance things call them controls, and they're things that would stop a bad guy from getting into your network or controlling that flow or whatever. And what I see most often is that the controls don't make sense from a bang for the buck. They'll have some of the some of the ones that are really very common blocked, but not all of them. And then they'll have some very obscure things that are very expensive to implement, that really, for dollars versus reduction in risk, is not a good math going on whenever they are looking at that. And that's why I wanted to have this specific product on, because this product really provides a very bang for the buck solution, and it allows for that endpoint protection that we really need, because most of our risk is in front of the it's really the person in front of the keyboard, but it's that endpoint is what we're focused on. So you know that's kind of the why of what I see, and you guys weigh in on that.
Well, I think you're totally right in framing it as a risk conversation, Phil, because it really is. It's like insurance to an extent, right? Like, why do you have business insurance and why are you doing that? It's weighing out risks and reduction of risks. And I think you're spot on describing it, figuring out the efficacy to the risk, right? What is that ROI versus the risk? Because everybody, lots of people have stories about, oh, they implemented this new security practice and now I can't do Y, right? And I, as a security professional, I'm like, of course we implemented it. It makes sense. But like, users are like, hold on, but now I have to, maybe I have to put an app on my phone to approve logins for MFA or something else. But it really is, from that business side, that risk acceptability and having those conversations and understanding, and what you're driving towards is driving that understanding of how much risk do you want to take on and what's the impact of accepting a large risk.
Yep.
Jeff, I know you have tons of thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think the V word it hits home when I hear what we said, Philip, is value, right? There are hundreds of products out there, and you can kind of use a comparison of like your house. You could hire a security team to stand at every window and door and protect your house, and you would know full well that no one's ever breaking into your house. But you probably wouldn't be able to eat or turn the power on or pay your mortgage or your rent because the cost of that would be just exorbitant. So you have to find something. You have to find things in the market that are effective, that are quality products, and that provide huge value. And as well to Ethan said, right? If the products are too restrictive, then the business can't operate. So this is a sweet spot. And again, coming from the MSP side, right? It's really hard to find that sweet spot. And your clients need that. Your clients need that sweet spot. They need to be able to operate and need to be able to afford great security.
Yeah. And I'll add to that. One of the focuses I've been really working on with clients and even on onboarding, even in presentations is we do a lot of lunch and learns. And when I kind of survey the role of the people that come to the lunch and learn, a lot of times they're IT people, and a lot of times they're kind of middle management people, more middle management operations people. And I don't often get the owner who actually makes the decision. I often don't get anybody from marketing who could relay some of the things. And I'm gonna touch on what you were saying. I'm kind of bouncing off of what Ethan said. I don't get the marketing people. I don't get the finance people. I get this small segment, and it's very difficult to implement a solution because when we do implement that solution, we're burning some of our credibility with our staff. And there is and if it's too restrictive or if they don't understand why they need it, we're burning up credibility. And that's why we want to, when we take a swing at something, we want it to be extremely meaningful, and we want to have it understood by the people. Is sometimes we got to make decisions as business owners to say, hey, you know what, we got to have this in place in order to protect the company. Well, that means it's protecting the people we serve. It also means it's protecting the staff for our existence. So I think that that message, we've got to work throughout our internal companies to get that message out. But kind of to my point originally, we don't want to swing at things and implement very restrictive things, especially the ones that don't give us much coverage or much reduction in risk, I'll say. So
Yeah.
let's kind of take a quick look at the state of cybersecurity. All-time high in the first 9 months of 23, data breaches in the U.S. rose almost 20%. That's incredible. And that's what I keep telling people is like, this ride ain't over. This is the fun's just begun as it relates to cybersecurity. Cost of crime, projected global crime costs are estimated to exceed $20 trillion by 2026. Understaffed. It's really, there's such a shortage of cybersecurity experts. And so what happens with that, I'll let you guys expound on this one. Under-resourced and understaffed. The clients focus on uptime. They want availability, and they don't quite connect that secure networks provide for higher availability. So they're all just worried about, they love their guy because when it broke, he ran there and fixed it. But really the answer would be for it not to break, in my opinion. And we have people making decisions about which products we put in place that bring the most effective solution for the money. And we don't have someone who's really focused a lot of attention or had training or the time in order to make those decisions widely for clients. And decisions and it's based off of influence and credibility, and we give our IT guys a lot of credibility because they're there for us when there's a fire. But they're really firemen rather than a guy walking around with his head clear and having some knowledge about how do I prevent fires. So you guys weigh in on your observation. You work with a lot of MSPs just like me. So, I mean, how accurate you think that is?
I think you're spot on. I think it's an all-time high in terms of cyber, crime, if you want to call it that. I think what you're going to find in 2024 is two things. Is the increase of targeted attacks are going to be on the rise. And the shotgun approach they're both on the rise. The shotgun approach of they're just going to spray attacks, and when they get things, they worry about them afterwards. I saw something where there's, groups, they get into airports, they go through the parking lots, and they just smash windows, open trunks, and see if bags are in there. They take the bags and then worry about them when they get home. And that's just like your 365 identity, right? If your identity lives inside, an internet accessible space, they're just gonna smash your window, get in, and then worry about what's inside afterwards.
Yep, for sure.
And you would have thought, right? If you go back in time, there was a point when MFA was a nice to have. It was a nice to have in 365. You didn't need it, but it was nice to have. Now you can't imagine living without it. It's just like go watch a movie from like 5-10 years ago and look at like the cell phones. Look at like how different things were 5-10 years ago. I see like on my social media, I see memories pop up, and I look and I see pictures. I'm like, what did I take that with? I took that with my BlackBerry 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and the other part about this is that people don't realize, or some people don't realize, I should say, is that it's a business on that other side, right? So it is an actual business these cyber criminals are putting together. And the professionalism of their business have rivaled definitely some businesses I've been experienced supporting, where they have handbooks on training their people how
Help
to do
desks.
how to do an attack, how to do help desk, how
Yeah.
to they have, and they're out there doing recruitment. They're out there, with quotas and bonuses and all types of things, I mean, legit business. So it is not something that is, back in the day, yeah, maybe it was a couple kids in a hoodie, or you hear about, yes, some of these attacks that are, some young teenagers doing some things, but most of these are very organized criminal enterprises.
Structured groups.
Yeah, syndicated
Yes.
where they share
Yeah.
resources. I did a talk in Montgomery and I was doing some research, and literally they have a platform that beats the like the I am human, or check the all the bicycles on the
The
pictures.
CAPTCHA. They can beat the CAPTCHAs now.
They can beat CAPTCHA now. And I was doing math because I think that it's important to look at it statistically so that we can determine what we need, what controls or what stops do we have in place. Basically, for $200, they can share a platform where they get 100,000 account credentials. They get the platform to be able to beat the CAPTCHA. They get an IP randomizer, so it looks like it's coming from different places to allow them to be more successful. And they're getting a 0.2 to 2% return, which means they would be successfully in logging into an account. Well, you think about it. Do the math on 0.2. That's 200 accounts breached for $200. Now, it didn't break down as to what that account was, but it doesn't matter. It could be the Microsoft 365. And I'm going to talk about a real life deal that I was involved in about a month ago about M365 breach. But it could be that. It could be Facebook. It could be Instagram. It could be your log into your computer. We don't know what it is, but 2% is 2,000. And if you give a bad guy access to between 200 or 2,000 access logins to a private account that's protected, they're going to make bank. And that's why that 20 million bucks, a lot of incentive to sharpen your saw.
Oh,
They're just going to think of the havoc. Think of the pain that each person, right? Yes, they're definitely making their investment back.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and again, if you really look at these people, and if you've ever really been up close and negotiated, which I haven't negotiated with the bad guys in a long time, because now with cyber liability insurance, they've got really a lot better people
Mm-hmm.
involved, but I have early on. And they're basically, their take always was they weren't mad, they weren't being mean, they were being nice, and they were gonna, if you gave them the money, they were gonna give you the keys to unencrypt it or whatever. And their attitude was, yeah, we just basically, we taught you, this was an educational process. Is there,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe honestly that's probably the talking points that they're telling these people, so they can so they can sleep at night or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's
That's
nothing
what they're
personal,
telling.
guys. Here's your stuff back. Thank you for your money. Pleasure doing business with you.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is.
And in general, they'll if you pay them, because again, they're syndicated. There's 13, let's say, major groups. They don't want to get a bad name for not delivering after you pay them, because then the whole world would say, well, hell, don't give them the money because we're not going to get the goods. There's no value there, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever we might say.
Yeah.
So it's a business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And
So,
then the other thing about it is, because of that connectedness of the world today with the internet, right? That your neighborhood is their neighborhood at this point in time, right? So like back in the day, to go walk through the airport and break into it, yeah, you had to physically be, down in Charlotte or, Syracuse, New York, or wherever. Now with the internet, they're
Be
in
wherever you want.
wherever they want. And unfortunately, when they hit a small, medium business, that business will have get impacted and have some losses, but they just you might not hear about it because they're not, it's not big enough for a headline, right? Like,
that's right. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. For every one that gets reported, there's 1,000 that don't.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I want to parlay off what Jeff said to kind of I'm glad you talked about the securing of a house and how you could have, armed guards, if you will, around every door and window. But what I see really happening is they may have an armed guard by certain doors and certain windows and pay a lot for that. And then they leave their car parked out on the street outside the gate with the freaking doors open,
Mm-hmm.
with the door unlocked. So
Key in the ignition. Yep, we're still running.
yeah,
Right, I'll be right back. I'm only running to the store.
yeah.
I'm only running to the house for a second.
And
Leave it
MFA
running.
has honestly gotten to that point where you're leaving the car running and the keys in it if you don't have multi-factor enabled. But anyway, let's look at why that this is happening and kind of dig in a little more. This is some real data. Not enough time to deal with IT and security tasks, 43%. Not enough skill, of course. Again, I talked about that. We're spending our capital, if you will, with our staff, and that relates to preventing team burnout. I don't want to do that to them because I'm going to burn them out. So anytime you're going to spend some of your capital as an employer or as a manager, you want to make damn sure it's worth it. So, coverage for after hours, most breaches happen on holidays and after 5 p.m. on Friday. They're going to hit when nobody, the least likely chance of someone watching, which is very relative to the product we're talking about today, because it don't sleep. Filtering and triaging security alerts. Again, it's a challenge for me. I'm going to be completely transparent. It's something that I am always concerned about, is the tools, those controls that we have in place. And I want to make sure that those alerts are A, happening, and B, working correctly.
yeah, well, and to your point, like, especially around those alerts, that they can get noisy, like there is your traditional, what I'll call proactive security controls, right? They're trying to block the bad guys from getting in. And then it's all right, now we need to look at the stuff happening after the fact. And that can get really noisy, because what are you looking at, and what is the key thing to look at? And there are examples out there of people who just, I was on I worked for one MSP where literally there were hundreds of open alerts that, engineer would come in first thing in the morning and close all of those down and be like, okay, close them out. They weren't important. And so it can happen.
It's hard. It's hard, and you have to be able to filter those down into actionable. And everybody has their limitations. So having strategic partners to be able to let engineers focus on their strong areas, right? Their strong suits, so that they can be providing enough value back to the end client, is important.
Then of course budgeting would be another one. That's where a lot of times not having the right people in the room whenever you're talking about security is so important, because oftentimes I feel like I'm between the IT guy and the owner. Like I got to hold the IT guy accountable, because if you look at how we do a lot of like profiling or assessments, that behavioral assessments, and IT guys don't like change. And so you got to hold them accountable to making sure they're not deleting the damn alerts. And then you got to get the business owner and say, look, bro, we're going to have to spend a little money, but we need to do it, of course, in the most effective way. And then, acquiring in-house security expertise is very much a challenge, because I haven't looked at the stat lately, but we're over 100,000 IT cybersecurity professionals short in America alone. It's very, very, very a big thing. And then, trying to retain in-house security expertise. I'm gonna tell you, I mean, transparency. I'm that guy. I hired a guy that was, as soon as he got a CISSP like me, shit, he got hired for more money. I couldn't afford him no more. Now he had to move out of the market, but still, I mean, I lost him, and I had to pay a headhunter to get him. I mean, it was that's very difficult. And then just remediating the actual tickets themselves, like fixing the problem. You look at, I'll go, Hillary Clinton was in the news with her email server, and one of the things that happened during that breach was one of the users asked the IT guy and said, hey, is this malicious? And he said, oh no, I looked at it, it's cool. And that actually enabled them to have access to that. So those are some real security challenges, and I want to kind of keep moving because I want to get to solutions for everybody. But one thing that's just amazing is that 10% of organizations didn't even know that they'd been hacked at all. They're living off the land, is what it's called, inside the network, and they don't even know, because on average it takes 207 days to identify that data breach. I mean, they're living in there, they're harvesting information, and kind of the MO is that they gain access to an account or to a network or to some type of asset, and then they figure out what they got. Sometimes, now it could be targeted where they know what they got, but a lot of times they're just figuring out what they got, and then they figure out how to exploit it. And then once they figure that they've kind of mined all of it that they can, they delete the logs and they encrypt.
Yeah, well, and it's because of that ecosystem, they've learned about specialization, Phil. So like, it is not just that it's one threat actor in there. There'll be a threat actor, and we've seen this on our side, where a threat actor will get into an environment and then they resell that access to somebody else to come in behind them. And
Absolutely.
so, they want to stay quiet, and they want to kind of stay in there, analogy I do is like a tick on your dog, right? They want to stay on there and suck as much blood out as possible.
It's kind of like down here on the coast, we have some oil wells and some gas wells offshore. And like my father-in-law worked for Exxon for years, and he was telling me that, at some point, Exxon being a larger organization, they're like what they thought was a profitable well was at a certain point, but there'd be some smaller companies that would come in and buy that well that it wasn't going to wasn't going to pump as much gas, let's say, but for the next guy in the tier, and that's kind of how the bad guys are, for that tier of bad guy, there's still enough juice for the squeeze.
Yep.
Yeah, Phil, I think the number on the page is important, right? Because it takes 207 days to identify a data breach. So somebody gets in, let's say they get into an environment, right? Let's say they have physical access and they're inside your network. Most folks backups don't last as long. And that's why the threat actors live in there, right? They know how long your backup cycles are going to be, so that, right, what's everybody's the typical responses, well, we'll just restore. We'll go back to our latest, our earliest backup. We'll just snap back. Well, they're still there because you didn't identify them when they first got in.
Exactly.
You know, the response of, well, I'm good. I have good backups and I just trust my backups. So if we had a data breach, if we had this kind of incident, we just restore and we'd move forward. We'll be back up tomorrow. You're not going to be back up tomorrow. And if they're still in there, they're going to wait for you to get moving again and they're going to hit you again. And then you're going to realize that the backups weren't enough because you didn't realize that access when it first happened. So backups aren't enough. You need to identify things as soon as they happen.
That's right. Response, yeah, basically penetration and response, they need to be, as close together, hopefully before they ever are actually able to detonate something. And Jeff, you're making there's a case in Atlanta. This was a few years back where Atlanta got hit with ransomware, and they gained access to the network. They logged into their backup system, and they recognized that they had a 90-day backup. And on the 91st day, they hit them. And what they did once they got there is they went in and they set the backup to where basically it was still running and it was successful, but they took out all the data files, like all the databases. They unselected them so that they weren't being backed up. And on the 91st day, they popped them because they knew they had them, and that was going to maximize. I mean, I like to think of things from other perspectives. I like to take something that's part of, kind of who we are as humans. We're, the crowning creation, if you will, and we can look at something from another perspective very easily. Dogs and creatures can't do that. And if you think about it from their perspective, that was good business.
Yeah, it was intelligent. It was an intelligent attack. Ethan and I have even been on calls where clients did not, accept enterprise level backups, and the threat actor gets in, does their work, deletes the backups, and then does their dirt, does the encryption, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And the partner comes to us, and the client didn't want to accept proper security. They were okay, right? They thought that we're small, where they can't find us, we're not going to be affected by any of this. And again, it was that shotgun approach. They got in, they didn't know what they were getting into until they had it. And now the business owner and all the employees are impacted for a long, long time.
Yep, for sure. And, so I want to kind of transition because I really want to give, I think that was good stuff, because that's the real deal stuff that's happening. And I think people need to, if they can get their head around that, and then if they can kind of think that way, kind of change their mindset, it makes actually employing or deploying something a lot easier to, have that conversation with the other members of the team, and to, understand the importance of it. So we want to talk about now really this a particular product. I'll tell you the name. It's Huntress. We manage it. We use it. There's not a device on my network that doesn't have it. I've been using it for several years. It's really matured so nicely that I had to get a hold of you, because I'm like, man, this is what everybody needs for bang for the buck kind of approach. But it's a way that we can secure our endpoints, which is that an endpoint is simply our computers, our laptops and things, no matter where they are in the world, our email, and ultimately our employees as well. So again, I don't want this to be a damn sales pitch or whatever, but I do want people, I have a lot of credibility, I think, with my clients. I've done this a long time and they know me. If I say it's something if I'm going to take the time and back something, I'm going to believe in it. And of course, one way I've proven that is that I use it. But here's how the product works. And ultimately, I'm going to let these guys, because they know the product very well. But basically, you want to be performing regular assessments and penetration testing. You want to know what's happening in near real time. And then you want to utilize that threat hunting technique. And I'm going to let you expound upon what threat hunting technique means. And we want to analyze logs with that continuing monitoring. And I'll just say, computers are great at logging things, and those logs have meaning. The problem is they produce tons and tons and tons of data that's very difficult it'd be impossible for a human to interpret. So jump off there with me, guys, and tell me.
Yeah, so thanks, Philip. When you talk about threat hunting techniques, think about there are dark places on the internet. There are dark places where the folks that are trying to steal all your stuff live. And the average security person, the average SOC can't or won't go there. Yeah, Security Operations Center, right? Yeah. The folks that are analyzing and making these security decisions. Most groups won't or can't go there. They don't know how to get there. And if they were in, they'd be just as much risk as the average user. We have a group inside our threat ops team that's where they live. They live there so that they can see the tradecraft and they can see the activity of the threat hunting group or the threat activity groups, the hackers, so that when they come, we're already prepared for them, right? We can see the way they work. And there are times when we see attacks and we can pinpoint, we can say, we see this attack, it's this group, because we can see their tradecraft. We can see the way they operate. Either we've seen this before or we have recognized that this group exists and this is the way they work. Ethan can expound a little more.
Well, I mean, one of the funny stories that one of our threat researchers, his name's John Hammond, young kid who is absolutely brilliant in this, he goes online regularly, and there was a new strain of a malware being developed that somebody was selling a tool for, right? It's this business, right? This guy specialized in it. And so John started chatting with the person on Telegram, one of these encrypted messaging apps, to say, hey, I'm interested in buying it. And the guy comes back and is like, sure, it's going to be X amount of Bitcoin or Monero to, one of these cryptocurrencies to purchase this from me. And John's like, okay. And the guy's like, oh, he's like, BTW, by the way, I love your handle in your Telegram. And John's like, oh man. He's like, I realized I had gone in with I hadn't used one of my fake identities. I'd gone in saying, John Hammond as the name in Telegram. And the guy's like, John's like, so I admitted to the guy, I was like, it's actually me. You caught me. I am not doing, I didn't do my tradecraft at all. I'm really embarrassed. I'm just going to end the conversation. And the guy's like, actually, I'm really excited because I saw John regularly does like videos of some of the things he finds out there, trying to further educate, because cybersecurity, one thing Huntress believes in deeply is it's a community effort. You can't know it all yourself. You need to share this information. John does these videos, and the cyber threat actor was like, oh, I loved your latest video you did on XYZ. He's like, I have to run. I'm going to have my assistant reach out to you in a week and we'll chat some more. Well, A, he's got an assistant. But B, lo and behold, John's like, okay, never going to hear from him again. Lo and behold, a week later, the assistant reaches out and says, Mr. So-and-so said I should reach out to you about setting up, you wanted a thing, but he wants you to prove that you're John. And so John literally took a selfie of himself with a note like those old, you see the old kidnapping images with like a newspaper with a date. And he had a note with today's newspaper saying, this is John. And lo and behold, the guy like gave him a free copy of the malware, was like, yeah, I think it's so awesome. And so the point I'm bringing up is, yeah, we have these researchers who are doing great things who even are known on that other side. Like, and
they know who we are in the bad places. They know who we are when we walk in the door.
Yeah, exactly.
And
if you think about it,
yeah,
this is the way the world is like, let's, like for that bad guy to have a good guy that's opposing him and that could crack him makes him get better at being a bad guy.
No, totally. It's that old, Mad Magazine spy versus spy. Image.
Yeah, but these guys are not like, they're business guys, and they're as smart as the good guys, a lot of them. It's just that it's a challenge, and like I say, this ride ain't over is the bigger part. And the bigger problem, I think, again, I'll go back to, is the fact that there's too many doors getting left open. If we could cover some of the very basics well, and I could talk for a day on how hard it is trying to cover it from a guy who manages a bunch of networks. And I even have, some solutions that, I will share with, kind of on offline with these guys that are on the call. But anyway, we want to talk about how to do it. So we want to implement endpoint detection and response. I would like for y'all to define that for me, and then update operating systems and applications regularly. Those are two very important things. And why are they important?
Jeff, you want to take the first one and I'll take the second one?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So endpoint detection and response. There are things going on your devices. If the depth and the expanse of let's say a Windows operating system is large, and you need something that's reviewing what's going on and able to take response, right? Response is that offline, right? If there was a threat, you would want something to be able to recognize the threat, and before you could respond, that it would help you out.
Yep, and take
it would take some action. It would take some action for you. Yeah, and think if you were sick, right? Think if you were sick and there was something, there was someone that could come in and be like, you know what, you're going home. You're not going to be around anybody else because you might get everybody else sick. That's what that is the best way I could think of to describe EDR. It's that response. It's that ability to take action on your behalf and help you out when you don't know that you might be the threat.
Right, because and what it does is it takes that mentality people have probably heard, Phil, of assume compromise, right? So this is what, if you assume compromise, yes, you've put in place all these great protective measures. Well, threat actors may have still figured out a way to get by it. And so then that's where this endpoint detection and response comes in place with that isolation. Because at the end of the day, threat actors are sophisticated. They're going to change what they are doing, but they do have a playbook, if you will, right? And so that's where a product like Huntress comes into play, because we can write detectors on those playbooks. At some point, getting to your next point about update your operating systems and applications regularly. Yes, that I used to call it basic cybersecurity hygiene, and somebody's like, no, that's basic IT hygiene. I was like, yeah, you're right. It is basic IT hygiene. Patch. We have one, I just saw it the other day come through, where there was a web server that was running an old version of software that was multiple years out of date, hadn't been supported for 3 years type of things, and that needed to be done. Now, our product detected, because what happened was the threat actor used a vulnerability. They found a vulnerability that's published. One of the reasons they update is for security reasons. And, these are out. You can go to GitHub, you can basically Google just about any software you can think of and say exploit after it, and you'll get taken to somebody's, public repository of this is how you get access to it. And what we then detected was we saw this web server suddenly running commands that no web server service should normally run. And that's how this endpoint detection and response works. But it's because the threat actors do their work and they start to scout it out. They're just like if you think of a criminal who scouts out a house, use that metaphor again of a house, they're going and rattling the windows and the doors and looking for things that haven't been patched regularly. And it's why you need to keep your systems up to date. I laughed when, I had clients of mine who at times, they ran QuickBooks and, well, my QuickBooks from 2012 is still working today. Yeah, but yes, it works, but the risk that you have now taken on, going all the way back to the beginning of that conversation, right? Oh my goodness, we've now introduced huge amounts of risk.
Yeah, for sure. And, I'll say, I can't remember but you remember the Oklahoma City bombing. I can't remember the guy's name, but ultimately, I like to explain Huntress or a proactive threat hunting solution like this. And they've tried to implement it in the real world. The guy goes out and he rents a truck. Well, hell, people rent trucks all day long. There's nothing malicious about that. But think of this as somebody building a bomb on your network is where I'm going, guys. And so, you put in a task in the Microsoft task manager to do something. Well, hell, that's Microsoft. It's a service offered within the product. That's not malicious. It's used all the time. Rent the truck. Then we go out and we buy a bunch of fertilizer. We download a file from a paste bin or somewhere on the internet. Files get downloaded all the time. Fertilizer in itself, man, that's what makes the grass green, right? That's good stuff. That's not a problem. Well, then he buys diesel fuel. Okay, well, hell, diesel fuel's used all day, every day, right? I got a diesel truck. I fill it up all the time, but then all of a sudden a detonator gets purchased. All of a sudden, and that's really what Huntress does. In my simple way of putting it is that it's watching the system, and it's watching because you guys know the bad guys, how they build bombs, if you will, all the little bomb tactics, them, and it's watching. And these things that are benign, that are not anything, but when you put them together using artificial intelligence, all of a sudden you see patterns and you're like, boom, that guy's building a damn bomb.
Yeah.
And then you say, all right, drop that thing off the network. It cuts that guy's access off, as well as it segregates it from the other population so it can't get anyone else sick. I think that's a pretty good analogy.
No, I think it's a great analogy. And the other part that's behind this is we have a 24/7 security operations center where these people are passionate about what they are doing. We have a follow the sun staffing model so that they're not chugging Red Bull to stay up in the middle of the night, which means you are getting people at their best day in and day out. And they can make intelligent decisions. So, Phil, to your point, we'll drop that one machine off the network, but I think it was Jeff. I think it was one of your clients.
I was dealing with.
200
on Monday, devices.
Right? Yeah, 200 devices. Suddenly, our SOC had sent one report, took one machine off. Half hour later, sent another report. Another 15 minutes, sent a third report. And our SOC was like, we're not messing around. There's somebody who's in here, hidden out in that network, burrowed down. We couldn't quite see where it was, but we were like, drop the whole network because let's minimize.
We're not going to wait, right? We're not going to wait and to see what else they're going to do. We're going to make certain that this entire environment is offline and that threat actor's been kicked out.
Yep. So I want to just look at email. Email is probably one of the top tier risks for business email compromise for small to mid-sized companies. And this is just, you got to have the right email filtering, which is a problem in itself because you look at how many emails actually happen. It's the number one way of communication and for business. And you see how many there are, and then you see how many of them are actually spam and are malicious in some way. There's probably, of all of them, 35% of them are bad, 40, 50, 60, which market it fluctuates, but still a huge number are bad. And we're fighting it all the time with people like a false positive or a false negative where something gets through that shouldn't. But when you look at the numbers of the volume, it's like 0.001% that we're dealing with that are a problem. So filters are pretty good today, but you got to have one, and it's going to cause some problems for sure. But you also got to use email encryption, and then you got to have multi-factor authentication enabled. I don't want to spend too much time because I want to respect everybody's time, and I want to tell this story that's going to touch this one. That's real. It happened in Pensacola within 6 weeks ago. And then you got to train your employees. We talked about that. You got to incorporate the whole team, and you got to train your employees, and you got to do it all the time, because it's like your kids, you can't tell them one time and they get it. You got to keep pushing. And
Yeah.
then
Well, and one thing, just to go on that, enforcing policies, right? Like that policy part of training is so key as well, Phil, because with that business email compromise, when they take something over, if you don't have policies about how you handle things, even like money, you can lead yourself to all sorts of things. I think that's probably where your story is unfortunately going to go towards. But
yeah, I could tell two stories, one in that way, as far as that have happened within the past couple of months, that I could tie in, that I personally dealt with, and they've been surrounded around email, and where training or internal controls would have made a big difference in those. And I'll go back even like to cybersecurity, the things that we're talking about, all the little questions here, they're on all the cyber liability insurance questionnaires nowadays. These are the things, and if you think about that, that's a gift, because they're basically telling us where they're having payouts. And that's why they're wanting you to have that, enforce some kind of security around these areas. And endpoint detection and response is like becoming one of the largest areas that is really, there was a real need for it. So that's big. And ultimately, we're talking a lot about the best defense is really a good offense. A little bit of offense is so much better than just trying to play defense.
Yeah.
And
No.
we talk about leading edge and trailing edge indicators and say sales or in a business market or whatever. And of course, we all know that if we can get leading edge indicators, we're going to make such better decisions, and we'll actually make our trailing edge indicators a lot better and I kind of look at this in that same manner.
No, definitely. And like your point is, a best defense is a good offense is totally right, because it is it's making it harder, right? It gets to that, the old story, at least when I was a kid, I've heard it multiple ways, but it's two guys out camping. When I was a kid, it was, Walter Payton and Tony Dorsett out camping, and suddenly a bear comes into the campground, and one of them starts to run out of the campground, and Walter Payton starts to tie on his sneakers, and Tony looks back and says, "What are you doing?" He's like, "All I have to do is outrun you," right?
Yeah.
That's part of that best defense.
That's right, for sure. And we'll talk a little bit about some threat hunting, and I want to leave a few minutes for us to talk about this particular situation that happened, and it is surrounding email. There's a client. It speaks to business too. It speaks to risk, and that's why I want to use this specific example that I was experienced with a net new client that we worked with, and they do testing for drug testing for businesses. And whether you know it or not, I didn't really understand it completely, but it's very difficult because there's a lot of different tests, and there's usually not one specific lab that'll do everything. So that's why this company arrives, because he kind of handles it. And there's also different types of billing, and some things are covered by insurance, some things are not. So there's a lot of details in that business. So this guy buys this business about a year ago, and 2 years prior to his purchase of the business, they had an on-premise server that held the data for all their clients and all the test results and everything. Well, that client, I mean that software producer went to a web-based version. So they backed up all the data, if you will, in basically an Excel spreadsheet, and emailed it to the the people that were implementing it for the cloud. All right, this happens 3 years ago. Well, lo and behold, 6 months ago, we'll say someone hacked that email account. And in hacking that email account, they're doing a discovery and they're looking through all of the files within there. They find this huge database of 150,000 records. And it had very sensitive information about people. As far as their passing and failing, as to what category of tests that they failed, had all their demographics as far as which companies that they work for. So it affected the companies that were using this company. It also affected their employees or potential employees with some very sensitive data. And this guy buys the company having really no knowledge, I would say, at time of purchase that it happened. And because of a damn email account not having multi-factor and that one getting compromised, he is literally, I mean, I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of attorneys and stuff that he's having to do in order to fix this up. Fortunately, he had cyber liability insurance, but he's taken a hit with all of those businesses, and he has taken a hit with all of those people and having to notify all of those people who took tests about what they lost. His business that he just purchased is, it could fail because of,
Yeah, the value that he paid for it isn't what it is right now, right? And he had no idea that this ticking time bomb, like you mentioned earlier, was just living out there.
Yeah, that's something that I've literally, and if multi-factor authentication would have been enabled on that email, the likelihood of that happening is damn near zero. And, that's something to me that is like just jarring, as a entrepreneur and a business guy, and, and it fires me up, makes me look at my stuff a lot harder all the time. And it makes me want to have a product like this because it will actually help me to notify me if multi-factor is not enabled. It'll let me know when someone gets on the network. It'll let me know proactively at the time so they can't live there, because there's no telling how long that guy had access, or the bad guys had access to that email. They parsed it. And the second one, we had it happen on a wire where somebody was living on somebody's email and they saw a big opportunity for a wire, and they got in the middle and was responding, say, from the web app, and put it into another folder, starts responding, and they wire $172,000 to the wrong account.
Yep.
That money is gone. It's hard gone.
Yeah, after a day or two, yeah, it's gone. And it was gone. It was 100% gone. That particular company didn't even have cyber liability insurance. They took a hit on the chin. Fortunately for that company, they were large enough to sustain that. But I'm going to tell you what, I mean, I'm dealing with the owner, and that boy is hot because he lost $170,000.
I heard,
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody down in the Louisiana Gulf region where it was a trailer company and they lost $500,000 because of it was a smaller mom and pop trailer company, and they lost $500,000 because of somebody got into theirs, got a invoice changed, and money went out the door and could not recover it.
Yeah. So those are real life deals. And, I don't want to kind of open it up for questions real quick. I know we're going to go over a minute or two, and I really want to respect everybody's time. I think we got the point across. You gentlemen were very helpful, and I think in the overall endeavor that I wanted to do today. Christy, do we have any questions? I know that she had some issues with her internet. She's her internet.
Oh, I'm back.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Any questions?
We did. We had a few questions come in. One, what types of threats does it prevent? Ransomware?
There is a particular component of this product called Canary. You guys want to quickly kind of explain what that is? Like when we say Canary, that's like where they're down in the mine.
Yep, that's the old canary in the coal mine. And so it's not necessarily that we can prevent ransomware from triggering on a machine, but we can limit that blast radius, right? The whole idea behind those canaries is they will be tripped by that threat actor if they get all the way to that. Ideally, because they're in that environment for so long, we're going to see that bad behavior early on. But if they get that far, we can, isolate multiple machines and make it so that maybe one machine got ransomed, but all the other machines are protected. So, it is a key part of our platform to make sure that we limit that damage done at any time.
Yep. That's any other, Christy?
Yes. Does Huntress replace our cybersecurity, or is it another layer?
It's definitely another layer. There's still, again, this is more of a kind of a threat hunting and looking, but I mean, you're still going to need firewalls. You're still going to need, good security passwords. You're still going to have multi-factor. This is just like ultimately like Big Brother working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, looking at everything. And again, for the money, it's like, it's really a very, very, very something that everybody needs to look at.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, it's that ounce of prevention, right? Is really what it comes down to, Phil.
Yep, for sure. All right. Anything else, Christy?
Yep. Last question. What about compliance? Does it meet compliance requirements?
Yes, it would. Again, like I was saying on the um, like on one of the controls, if you will, they have endpoint detection and response is one of the big controls that they're requiring for a lot of compliance models. And it will absolutely check that box. But here's the bigger thing, and I've been attempting to say it all day, and I want to take another crack at it so I can maybe drive my point home. If you look at most compliance, and I just want to be real with everybody, if you look at most compliance models, there is not somebody coming out to check. It's self-attestation. And most companies that are required to these high levels of compliance are not fulfilling their obligation. And it leaves them extremely vulnerable. Um, but it's like there's no problem until there's a problem. When it's like when there is a breach, when there is something that happens, now all of a sudden they're exposed and they have to deal with their sometimes those self-attestations. Most of the time they have in some way attested. That's like putting your hand on the Bible, raising your hand saying all these things we've done, and they haven't. So there's huge implications to that. And that's what I'm trying to solve is first order businesses do no harm. Let's put the most affordable, the most risk reducing controls in place so we don't have a problem. And I think this product fits in that mindset so well is why I would want to do a specific product webinar and why, like I would even talk about, for you guys, if you'll talk to me before January 31st, I'll do a basic risk assessment with your company. I'll demo this product. I'll show you like the gaps in that core controls that we need to get implemented, and again go to link to be able to explain why we need them and what problems they solve, and statistically why we need them, not just Phillip Long's thing, but really why you need them based off the threats that are actually happening. And we'll do a demo on this, and I'll even give you like an annual training that you could give to your employees and get a certificate, like web-based training that'll go a long ways if in just educating your staff. And if you would like to take us up on that, and I can bring these guys in, of course, to do the demo on the product and and kind of talk a little bit deeper. But all you got to do is a lot of you got the emails to register. Email the company or just email security at AskBIS and request that. And I'd be happy to to get on and make sure that we're meeting at least those, or at least know like, okay, this is the controls we really feel like are fundamental, and these are the ones we're missing. Now, how do we create a roadmap to get there? But this product, I think, is such a beautiful product because what you said earlier, Ethan, is like the guy who wasn't patching the web server. Like there's a known vulnerability, but you guys know it too. So if somebody starts trying to exploit it, it gets triggered. So it kind of, it's like caulk. They say caulk covers a multitude of sins. So this product will help cover some of the shortcomings that maybe we have done or aren't on our radar. Is why, again, I wanted to bring this out in a webinar.
Thanks, Philip. Yeah, I would definitely encourage folks to do assessments. It's having a visibility on your risk is knowing where you stand to know where you're going to go, and accept that everybody is at risk, and as much you can do to limit that is the first step.
Yep, for sure. Well, I would like to, really thank everybody for taking the time to listen. I feel, I always feel a little better about things after we labored a minute on trying to make things better. And, I think this is good work right here. And I appreciate Ethan. I appreciate Jeff. I appreciate Christy, all the work that y'all did to help. And like I say, email us and let us know how we can get you scheduled in and kind of, we'll call it a baseline, like, here's where you are, here's where we think. Again, I'm thinking not from all the way level of every compliance you may be required, but let's get it where first order business is, let's no harm happen to us. And you can do that very cost effectively. And, I say half a win is not losing. Let's don't put ourselves in a position like that guy did who just bought a damn company, and now he's dealing with a huge loss and an uphill climb on something that he thought he had a good deal. So want to think about those things, and let's act on them when there's not a fire.
Sounds good, Philip. Thanks for having us on.
Yep. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Right. Thank you.